If you're watching this and you've ever felt something crawling on your skin, your arm, your neck, your scalp, but when you looked, nothing was there, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here because I've been on the other side of this, and I know exactly what that sensation means. For years, I was deep in satanic ritual work. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't experimenting. I was trained. I was initiated. And one of the earliest signs we were taught to recognize, one of the most ignored signs by ordinary people, was unexplained skin sensations. Not medical, not psychological, spiritual. I remember the first time I learned the truth behind it. We were told, if they start feeling movement with no cause, the door has already been opened. And that sentence has never left me. Because most people don't open doors on purpose. They open them through trauma, grief, fear, pornography, certain music frequencies, rituals they didn't know were rituals, or even objects in their homes that were prayed over without their knowledge. You might be thinking, I rebuke this. I prayed. I asked God to remove it. So why does it still happen? That question tells me you're spiritually aware. But awareness without understanding can still leave you vulnerable. Let me say this plainly. Not every itch is spiritual, but persistent, random sensations, especially when they happen during prayer, worship, or at night, were one of the primary indicators we used to identify spiritual attachment or monitoring. I'm not saying possession. I'm saying access. There's a difference. When I walked away from the occult and gave my life to Christ, these sensations didn't disappear overnight. That shocked me. I thought salvation meant instant freedom. What I learned instead was that deliverance is a process and exposure is the enemy's greatest fear. That's why this video exists. Because what you're experiencing isn't random and it's not invisible to the spiritual realm. In the next chapter, I'm going to explain why the skin is targeted, how spirits use sensation to establish fear and familiarity, and what most churches never teach about shutting this down permanently. Stay with me. This is important. To understand why this happens, you need to understand something the occult knows very well, but rarely gets explained in church. The skin is not just physical. It is a boundary. It is where the spiritual and physical senses overlap. That's why fear causes goosebumps. That's why worship can make you feel heat. And that's exactly why dark spirits target sensation before manifestation. When I was trained in the occult, we were taught that spirits look for reaction, not strength. They don't start by moving objects or causing chaos. That comes later. First, they test awareness. They test sensitivity. And the easiest way to do that is through the nervous system, through touch, a light crawling feeling, a brush, a tingling, something subtle enough that you doubt yourself. That doubt is not accidental. It's strategic. Here's what we were taught. If a person feels something but dismisses it, the spirit learns it can operate without resistance. If the person feels fear, the spirit learns where to press. If the person prays but doesn't understand authority, the spirit learns to wait. That's why many people say, it only happens at night, or it happens when I'm trying to pray, or it happens when I'm lying still. Stillness lowers distraction. Prayer increases spiritual awareness. Night removes noise. All three make you easier to monitor. I need to say this clearly. This sensation is rarely meant to hurt you. It's meant to introduce itself. Familiarity is the goal. Once something becomes familiar, it becomes tolerated. And once it's tolerated, it's rarely confronted with authority. In rituals, we called this the marking face. Not a physical mark, but a sensory memory. The body remembers the feeling even when the mind tries to forget. And that memory can become a doorway for fear, insomnia, anxiety, and even intrusive thoughts. This is why so many people experience this after seasons of trauma. Trauma weakens boundaries. It creates cracks in emotional and spiritual defenses. Spirits don't create the wound, but they absolutely exploit it. And here's the part most people miss. Ignoring it doesn't make it stop, but panicking empowers it. The correct response is discernment paired with authority. In the next chapter, I'm going to expose the specific doorways that allow this sensation to begin, objects, habits, and spiritual agreements you may have made without realizing it, and how to identify which one applies to you. Don't click away. This is where clarity starts. One of the biggest lies people believe is that spiritual access only comes through obvious witchcraft or deliberate occult practice. That's not true. In my years inside the system, most assignments didn't come from rituals people knew they were participating in. They came from agreements people never realized they made. Let me explain what I mean by agreements. An agreement is anything that gives permission, spoken, emotional, habitual, or symbolic. Spirits are legalistic. They look for consent, not morality. That consent can come through words like, I'll never be free, or this fear will always be with me. It can come through entertainment that glorifies darkness. It can come through objects that were dedicated, gifted, or inherited. And yes, it can even come through trauma responses that never healed. I remember how we were taught to identify open doors quickly. First, we looked at the home, items from previous relationships, souvenirs from spiritual locations, jewelry with symbols people thought were just cultural, dream catchers, crystals, certain books, certain music constantly playing in the background. These weren't random. They acted like antennas. Second, we looked at habits. Late, night scrolling through explicit content, obsession with true crime or horror, repetitive negative self-talk. These habits lower spiritual defenses over time. Not instantly, but gradually. And when the defenses drop, sensation increases. That's when people start saying, I feel something touch me when I'm alone. Third, and this one is the most common, we looked at emotional wounds, rejection, abandonment, abuse, loss. Trauma creates internal vows, I have to stay alert, or I'm never safe. Those vows keep the nervous system in a constant state of openness. Spirits don't need to break in when the door is already cracked. This is why some of you noticed the sensations began after a breakup, a death, or a season of intense stress. It wasn't random timing, it was vulnerability. But here's the truth that should bring you peace: access is not ownership. Feeling something does not mean you belong to it. And awareness means the assignment has already failed. In the next chapter, I'm going to tell you exactly what not to do when this sensation happens, because many well-meaning believers accidentally make it worse. And then I'll walk you toward the posture that shuts it down. Stay with me. You're closer to freedom than you think. This chapter may be uncomfortable, but it's necessary because many sincere believers unknowingly strengthen what they're trying to get rid of. I did the same thing when I first came out of the occult. The first mistake is panic. The moment you jump, shake your body, or frantically swipe at your skin, you've already communicated something in the spiritual realm. This has your attention. Spirits feed on reaction. Fear is not just an emotion, it's a signal. When fear spikes, authority drops. That's why the sensation often increases when people are anxious, overtired, or already stressed. The second mistake is obsessively rebuking without understanding authority, saying, I rebuke you, over and over, while internally feeling powerless, does not shut anything down. In the occult, we were taught to wait that out. Emotional rebukes fade. Authority-backed commands do not. Here's the hard truth: authority is not volume. It's alignment. You can whisper one sentence in alignment with Christ and stop an assignment instantly, or shout for hours with no effect if you're operating from fear. The third mistake is constantly checking your body, scanning your arms, watching your legs, waiting for the next sensation. That hyper focus trains your nervous system to expect contact. And expectation creates sensitivity. Sensitivity creates amplification. This is not imagination, it's conditioning. Another common mistake is assuming every sensation means attack. That mindset keeps people spiritually exhausted. Remember what I said earlier, not every itch is spiritual. But when you treat everything as spiritual warfare, you stay in battle mode, and battle mode keeps the door open. One of the most damaging responses is isolation. People stop talking about it because they don't want to sound crazy or unspiritual. Silence doesn't protect you, it protects the problem. Darkness survives best when it's unnamed. When we trained people in the occult, we counted on these reactions: panic, obsession, silence, fatigue. Those were signs the assignment was working, not because the spirit was strong, but because the person didn't know how to stand. Here's the shift you need to make: stop reacting and start positioning. Positioning is calm. Positioning is grounded. Positioning says, I know who I belong to, and I'm not impressed by sensation. In the next chapter, I'm going to show you what actually stops this: not hype, not rituals, not fear-driven prayers, but a simple, repeatable posture that removes access and restores peace. Don't rush. Freedom doesn't come through force. It comes through clarity. This is the part people expect to be dramatic. They expect a long prayer, a special ritual, a list of words to shout. That expectation alone tells me how deeply the church has misunderstood spiritual authority. What actually shuts this down is not intensity, it's position. When the sensation happens, the most powerful thing you can do is not move, not out of fear, but out of confidence. Stillness with authority is deeply unsettling to anything operating illegally. You are not trying to feel powerful. You are standing in what already belongs to you. Here is what we were taught to watch for. In the occult, the moment a person stopped reacting emotionally and instead responded from identity, the assignment weakened. Not immediately every time, but consistently. Because spirits recognize rank. They don't care how long you've been a believer. They care whether you know who you are aligned with. Your posture should sound something like this, spoken calmly, internally, or out loud. I recognize this sensation and I do not agree with it. My body belongs to Jesus Christ. You have no permission here. Leave. No anger, no pleading, no fear, just clarity. Why does this work? Because agreement is the fuel. When you withdraw agreement, access collapses. Sensation without agreement cannot stay long term. It may attempt to return, especially if the door was open for years, but each time you respond from authority instead of reaction, the duration shortens and the intensity weakens. Another critical part of this posture is gratitude. This sounds strange, but it's powerful. When you shift into worship or thankfulness in the moment, quietly, sincerely, you change the atmosphere instantly. Darkness does not coexist well with peace filled gratitude, not forced praise, real acknowledgement of God's presence. I also need to say this: you do not need to feel spiritual to be effective. Feelings are unreliable. Authority is not. Some of you are waiting to feel bold before you stand firm. That day may never come. Stand anyway. Authority works even when your emotions lag behind. Consistency matters more than intensity. The goal is not to win a dramatic battle, it's to close a door permanently. That happens through repeated, calm resistance paired with alignment in daily life. And yes, this may mean removing certain objects, changing certain habits, addressing unresolved trauma with godly counsel. Deliverance is holistic. The spirit, soul, and body work together. In the next chapter, I'm going to talk about why this sensation often increases right before it stops completely, and how to recognize the difference between a final resistance and a real problem. You're not losing ground, you're reclaiming it.